Hello everyone, my name is Patience Blythe and I am an educator in Elgin ISD. We are a small district northeast of Austin, Texas, and we have a small district of 5 schools, 3 elementaries, 1 middle, and 1 high school, and this will be my 15th year in public education. I have always been a middle school teacher. This is going to be my first year as a high school teacher, and I'll be teaching the computer science pathway classes at Elgin High School. I'm super excited about the change, but a little intimidated about teaching online. I wanted to make this video because I'm also enrolled in a digital learning and leading program, master's program through Lamar University. And we have discussed a lot about how do we use digital tools as such to emphasize really high quality, effective learning for students. So I wanted to make this video. We're going to talk about effective online teaching using a pedagogical approach. And it's based on a rubric, and I'm going to provide that rubric to you from an organization called Quality Matters, and you can access their website using the link below the video. And we can just take a look at what we think are the key core aspects of effective online teaching, because we know that it's not the same as teaching face-to-face. The video is going to have 4 parts. The first one is why do we need to critically assess pedagogy, really looking at how we teach and how this method of teaching is going to be different from our normal way. Number 2, the structure of your online class, how it should look and how it should be how students should interact with it. Number 3, engagement with your online class, really thinking about how we want our students to be active learners. And lastly, accessibility and resources. I've got some resources for you at the end. So number 1, talking about pedagogy in the online classroom. As we all know, pedagogy is defined as the method and practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or theoretical concept. We all understand that, and we know what that looks like in an in-person classroom of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 students. Now, with this year, our challenge is to start school online, meaning that those pedagogical practices are not going to be able to be the same. So as we move forward in this goal of making this online learning experience meaningful for all students, it's really important that we come at this from an equity-based perspective. Now, equity is a process of identifying and critiquing structural and personal biases that impact students' access to the benefits of a high-quality education. Simply put, equity is giving students what they need, but this idea is not simple. I'm going to tell you a story from my teaching background. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. You probably remember this. I started teaching in 2005, and because I was teaching in Austin, received a lot of students from New Orleans. We called them the Katrina kids. Most of them had been in the Superdome. Most of them had to leave New Orleans and had come to Austin without having any sort of sense of community or family in the city. But they were great kids, they were sweet kids, they were funny kids, and we really, all the teachers that worked with them really enjoyed having them. One of the things that happened with those kiddos is when they arrived, we decided to be equitable, and we wanted to give them all the same resources that all the students in the school had from Austin ISD. So in their social studies class, their math class, I think in their science class, I was a science teacher at the time, we gave them these tax prep workbooks. This is back in the days of tax. This is before STAR. We gave these students workbooks, and we put them in front of them. And I will never forget, the vast majority of those kids asked what they were supposed to do with those workbooks. Now, from an equity perspective, we might say that we were being equitable by giving these students these workbooks. But in fact, we weren't. We were giving these students a tool, but they didn't know what to do with that tool because they'd never had workbooks before, and they weren't sure what they were supposed to do with. Were they supposed to put their name on them? Were they supposed to open them? Were they supposed to do the work by themselves? We actually did not provide equity in that circumstance. We provided equality. Now, when we distribute all these Chromebooks to students and hotspots and iPads that we're doing over the next few weeks, we are establishing equality right? Equality of access, but we are not focusing on the importance of equity or providing each student with what she or he needs to be successful. So when we start to design these online classes, we have to start thinking about equity. How am I going to meet these students where they need to be met, where they want to be met, so that I can make this experience meaningful for them? I'm going to play a video for you here. It's by Dr. Chris Emden. He is a professor and a influencer in the world of innovative education. I've clipped this video, but you can see the whole video at the link below. So I hope you enjoy what he says about his ideas of reality pedagogy and how that might relate to learning how to best teach online.
So reality pedagogy has 5 C's. The first C is this idea of co-generative dialogues. What are co-generative dialogues? Simple. Co, together. Generative, we generate. Dialogues. I'm arguing that in every classroom, why don't we create an opportunity for the teacher to pick 4 students that represent different demographics in the classroom and engage with them outside of the classroom about what their experiences are about what's going on in the class, with a goal of co-generating a plan of action for improving the class. So for example, you're always yelling. I've heard this actually. No, I never yell. No, you do. And when you do that, I don't want to learn anymore. Next time you're in that classroom, check that. And when I'm about to yell, I look around and those 4 faces are staring at me. And they realize that I've empowered them by allowing them to give me some critique of my instruction. And then I maneuver and change my instruction to not do what they found oppressive. Co-generative dialogue. Asking youth to co-generate ideas about improving instruction and giving them the opportunity to critique the instruction. So you're not teaching from your point of guilt, but you're teaching from their perspectives about what's powerful. That's the first C. The second C, this idea of co-teaching. We think of co-teaching as having one teacher in the classroom, and then you have the co-teacher who gets the coffee and makes the copies, right? But let's move that idea beyond that and say co-teaching as in letting youth teach the class. Give a young person a homework assignment that is not answer questions 45, 1 through 4, multiple choice, but actually here's the teacher's manual, here's a sample lesson plan, go home and write a lesson plan. Use your own examples, and then come back into the classroom and teach that lesson. And let the teacher sit where the student is, and the student be positioned where the teacher was, and let there be a different type of exchange. Let the students know that you understand that they are the expert in how to deliver the information to each other, and you are only the content expert. Give them the opportunity to have voice. Give them the opportunity to see how tough it is to be a teacher. But the idea here is to change the structure, to give them agency, because they will inform you on what the best practice is. That's the second C of co-teaching. The third C is this idea of cosmopolitanism, a broad philosophical tenet that sounds like a mouthful, but we're going to whittle it down to something really simple, which is interrogate the ways youth communicate with each other outside the classroom and utilize them inside the classroom. What do I mean? If youth outside of the classroom are using head nods and handshakes as a way to combine and connect to each other, this is part and parcel of gang culture that creates an anti-school identity. Why can't we use those same structures and associate them with a pro-school identity? That when you score a question right, you can have a 4-minute handshake if that's what you want to do. Or you can do the Dougie if that's what you like to do. But that the forms of expression and celebration welcome the ways that youth engage and communicate outside of the classroom. The ways they have responsibility for each other outside of the classroom should be the same inside. When they work in groups, and we assign them to groups only for that 2-minute activity. When outside of the classroom, they ride the bus together, live together, wake each other up in the morning, dwell together. Why can't we create partnerships of students in classrooms that can travail the course of the academic year or all 4 years of high school, creating a pseudo-family for students who oftentimes have a broken family structure? The third C, cosmopolitanism. The fourth C, this idea of context. Context means a culturally relevant or responsive teacher has a perception of the culture of the student. But the reality is that experiences of students in the Bronx or Oakland or Johannesburg or Nairobi are all different. There are certain traditions that are the same, but they're distinct things. They're nuanced things about culture that are very different. So when we're talking about context, we're saying in the instruction, be hyper-focused on the immediate communities the students are from. You don't have to go and get the microscopes to the back of the class from the back of the class. You can name the back of the class a street corner in the community. Go to the corner of 183rd and Grand Concourse and pick up the microscopes. Go to Jane and Finch and pick up the textbooks. It's a seemingly superficial thing. But what it does for young people, it allows them to see that you're not imposing yourself on them. You're understanding that where they come from has value. When we talk about context, it also means not thinking of the academic space as a sanitized space. Context means, who are the icons in the community? Is it the person who did that graffiti image? Is it the guy at the pizza store that knows everybody's name within a 12-block radius? If those people are powerful in the context of the community, then we cannot let them rest in the community. We must bring them into the school. Have them be a part of the instruction. Have them be an example. Have them talk about the science and mathematics in their life worlds. Context. And the last C is content. Really? You're a math and science educator and content is last? Yes. Because we put content first. We've dropped boulders on youth. And we've not gotten a chance to get them to actually connect. You cannot get to the content if you don't focus on the environment of the classroom. You can't focus on content if they don't have voice, if they don't have agency, if they don't have a stage, if they don't have a platform, if they don't see their life worlds outside of the classroom, inside of the classroom. If those things don't happen, content knowledge will not be developed. Few may get it, but we must realize that those who do get it become successful in spite of, not because of, our practices.
Okay, so why did I ask you to watch that video clip? Dr. Emden really focuses on something that we all have probably heard about. He talks about equity, he talks about student voice and choice, but he also really talks about, instead of looking at students from a deficit perspective, looking at them from an asset perspective. Now, in terms of online teaching this year, I hope that you got some nuggets from that video about things that you could do to bring in those C's, the 5 C's that he talks about, into your online classroom. Now, in certain circumstances, that may be hard. If you are teaching geometry, for example, or ELA in 7th grade, you have certain content that you have to teach each and every day, right? That's just the truth. But one of the things you could do, can you bring in social interaction into your online classroom? Can you tie something to the community, to where they live? What can you do to make this home-based learning, this virtual remote learning, become more meaningful and real? Because that is not going to feel real to a lot of our students and frankly to a lot of us as teachers. So what can we do to make this more real? I think those 5 C's have something to do with it. Now, when we are talking about our pedagogical practices for online teaching, we want to think about 3 things. Less is more. Be clear, be concise, be considerate. Whenever you write your lessons, whenever you put your materials up for your students, you want to make sure that it is created and displayed in the most efficient way possible, understanding that students may have little kids to take care of, they may have intermittent internet, or they may have to go to another place to get advantage of internet. So please just really focus on that efficiency. And we'll talk about that more in the structure section. Remember that yes, you can. You do not need to be a computer programmer to teach an online class. You just need to try. We say this to our students all the time. You just need to try. You can do it. If you have a willingness to focus on engagement and equity, you'll be successful at this. Lastly, mind the gaps and remember that no one is an island. Remember that teaching online is going to expose gaps in student learning activities, student learning strengths, weaknesses, and their behaviors. Be flexible and open to talking to the students and their families about what's going on with them and be willing to listen. Also, make sure that you reach out to your community, whether that's the teachers that you teach with, whether that's a Facebook group of teachers that you're a part of, or even some colleagues from an earlier school. Make sure you reach out to those people and talk with them, because we're going to get much of our good stuff, our information, and our successes from each other, remembering that we're not doing this alone. Okay, so let's talk about the structure of your online class. All right, your course overview and introduction. So this is pulled directly from that rubric. I tried to make it a little more streamlined. So just make sure that you have instructions that make clear how to get started and where to find various course components. Make sure that etiquette or netiquette, expectations for online discussions, email, etc., are stated clearly. Make sure that course and or institutional policies with which the student is expected to comply are clearly stated. That would be things like turning things in by the end of the school day, making sure that you don't plagiarize, things like that. The introduction by the teacher is appropriate and available online. So you want to do a video of yourself or a picture and a description. And then also that students are asked to introduce themselves to the class. Remember that we're trying to create community in this class, so figuring out a way for them to be able to do that. Learning objectives for your class. Make sure that they are measurable. Make sure that these objectives are stated clearly and are written from a student perspective. Make sure that instructions to students on how to meet those learning objectives are adequate and stated clearly. If you keep noticing, they keep stating clearly, clearly, clearly. Assessment, making sure that assessments selected measure the stated learning objectives and are consistent with course activities and resources. No curveballs in online learning, in other words. The course grading policy is stated clearly. Make sure that specific and descriptive criteria are provided for evaluation of student work. And make sure that the assessments are sequenced, varied, and appropriate to the student work being assessed. So don't always do the same thing, try to change it up a little bit. Instructional materials, making sure that our materials contribute to the achievement of the stated objectives, making sure that the purpose of the instructional materials and how the materials are to be used for learning are clearly explained, making sure that the instructional materials present a variety of perspectives on the course content. Number 3, engagement, the big piece. A picture is worth 1,000 words. When we look at these two pictures, we understand which student we want to be in our class. All right, in education, engagement refers to the degree of attention, curiosity, interest, optimism, and passion that students show when they are learning or being taught, which extends to the level of motivation they have to learn and progress through their education. When we're talking about remote learning, we've got to do things a little bit differently. We need to create a digital classroom in which each student is motivated to achieve at their highest level. And that goes back to that equity piece and thinking about equity as providing each student with what she or he needs, understanding that that is not a simple solution. Without engagement strategies, you're not going to get anywhere with your online classroom because your students will have a hard time getting started. You will have a hard time keeping them engaged. So here's some criteria for your engagement strategies. Making sure that the learning activities promote the achievement of stated learning objectives. Making sure that those activities also provide opportunities for interaction that support active learning. So can they get up and make you videos? Is there a way to create a student discussion? What are some ways you can get them to be social and interacting with each other even though they're not in the same physical space? The instructor's plan for classroom response time and feedback on assignments is clearly stated for students. They know when they're going to get graded, and the requirements for student interaction are clearly stated. So if you want them to interact with each other, you need to make sure you tell them how to do that and that they're each expected to do that, so everything is clear, clear, clear. Course technology, the tools and media support the course learning objectives. Making sure that the tools and media support student engagement and guide the student to become an active learner. That's the key statement, is that we want these active learners in our online classrooms. We want to make sure the navigation through the online component of the course is logical, consistent, and efficient. Nothing should be tricky or confusing. Making sure that students can readily access the technologies required for the course. That would be including things like offline download options. Learner support, making sure that the course instructions link to a clear description of technical support and how to access it. Don't assume your students know how to do that. Course instructions link to an explanation of how students can access academic support, services, and resources. For example, ask your special education inclusion teacher or teachers to be teachers in your Google Classroom, and make sure students and parents know how to contact that person. Number 4, accessibility and resources. Making sure that the course employs accessible technologies and provides guidance on how to obtain accommodations is going to be key for your special education students as well as your English language learners or any other students that need accessibility tools. Making sure that your course design facilitates readability and minimizes distractions. For online teaching, we don't want any bells and whistles. We want it to be very, very clear and concise and efficient. We want to make sure that the course design accommodates the use of assistive technologies, making sure that we also explicitly teach and note the use of these technologies, such as read-write or the iPad Speak feature. Making sure also that the course contains equivalent alternatives to auditory and visual content as needed if you have students that have auditory or visual needs. Last but not least, just remember that online learning brings the world into your classroom. Resources for online learning are everywhere, and your potential as an online educator is really limitless. Below are some recommended resources that may help you, but remember, your community will provide the greatest help. Remember that no one is an island in online learning. Loom is a video and messaging service. It's free for teachers, and it's what I'm using for this video. That's why you see me in the bottom left-hand corner. Khan Academy are free videos on a wide range of topics that are all focused on student learning, and they are specifically adjusting their content for remote learning. The New EdTech Classroom on YouTube is an amazing YouTube channel hosted by educator Sam Carey, and he provides excellent videos on how to structure and organize your Google Classroom, and he just created one the other day about how to organize it best for remote learning. The Cult of Pedagogy is one of my favorite education blogs. This article called Cult of Distance Learning is just an excellent discussion of the ups and downs of online learning, including things like the feelings that a lot of teachers have about inadequacy and concern about not being able to reach our students. She also brings in resources and ideas, and also links to Facebook groups where you can meet other teachers and discuss how your online plan is going. This is just a small list, so go and seek some more and add them to the comments below this video. I want to say thank you so much for your attention. Keep calm and carry on teaching. We're going to figure this out one way or another, and the best way we can do it is by forging and holding on to those communities, both within teachers and between teachers and students. So I hope this was valuable to you. Please stay in touch. There's my email address. You can also go to my teaching website, which is blythedesigneducation.com, or comment below. Thanks again, and have a great year.